thank you all for coming. This is super exciting. Hopefully we can share a little bit about how Stripe is thinking about AI in particular. So maybe to introduce ourselves, I'm Karan, a product lead on the Applied ML team at Stripe. Over the last 6 years, I've worked on a bunch of different Stripe products, and my current role, I'm really focused on how to inject AI and machine learning into those products.
And I'm GK, I'm the engineering lead for the Applied ML team. I've been doing ML for about 15 years, but it all feels so exciting and new given how quickly things are changing.
So before we jump in, I would love to get a sense of who all is in the room and what you're building. I would love for you to raise your hands. Who all is building AI products in the room? Great. We didn't raise our hands, but we would raise our hands for the same questions as well. And so we'd love to kind of introduce you to how Stripe is thinking about AI. So really, as David mentioned, there's three major ways we think about AI. First and foremost, it's how do we support AI companies. Stripe ultimately is not an AI company, but we want to support all of you all in building your businesses. Secondly, we've been using machine learning for quite a while, and GK will kind of discuss the ways in which we've done that and kind of the various products where it's been integrated. And then thirdly, we've really taken on large language models and have applied to a bunch of different parts of our business, both internally and externally, and would love to share that with you. As you probably know, our mission is to increase the GDP of the internet. We do that by building critical financial infrastructure to help businesses get started and scale. We started supporting developers, building startups, and helping them accept payments quickly, and then really have scaled to supporting large enterprises. We actually have over 100 companies accepting $1 billion in payments these days to really give you a sense of that scale. Now, even through that growth, we've been very, very focused throughout that on enabling people to just get started and sign up on our website and accept payments within minutes. As David mentioned, that's been especially true for AI companies where you need to monetize super early, and we want to help support that. And so that's really the primary way in which we think about AI, and as most people at Stripe will kind of ask you, if you have any questions or comments about Stripe, like definitely find us and we'd be happy to help you.
Now, machine learning is not new at Stripe. We are critical financial infrastructure, and managing risk for our users is super important to us. Right from the very beginning, we've had simple linear models with counting features. Over time, we graduated them to boosted trees, and then about 2 years ago, we moved most of our flagship models to be transformer-based. Here I show an architecture diagram of one of our risk models that learns from raw sequences of API events, which turn out to be excellent at predicting bad actors in our ecosystem. Another cool place where we apply ML is in our identity verification system. It has about a dozen models or so that learn image, video, and text inputs to identify our end users. One of the super interesting questions in that space is, what does identity verification look like in a world of deepfakes?
So let's fast forward to 2023, where everybody's probably playing around with LLMs in their free time. And the big question we had was, how do we actually apply that to a workplace context? There's like a bunch of questions of how to do so in a safe way. In particular, how do you protect Stripe's data when using LLMs? And then how do you make sure we protect our customers' data when using them as well? These barriers are tough to grapple with for every business and thinking about how to use LLMs internally. But given our experience with machine learning, we just knew that this was a transformational technology that everybody should really develop intuition around. The other angle to this is we could have built a central team that was building all of LLM applications for internal use and externally, but we fundamentally believe that every single employee at Stripe should understand this technology deeply and be able to apply it within their own domains. And so we spun up a Tiger team to go validate that and develop a solution that both protected our data and scrubbed PII from entering the system. And 3 engineers in just 3 weeks were able to produce this internal chat application so that every Stripe could use LLMs in a work context. Now, I knew we were going to use this like on a daily basis, but actually like a third of the company started using this very actively, which surprised us and was really exciting to just see how much of a hold it had. You can kind of compare this to traditional machine learning, which also has like awesome application, but it's not as easy to use for every employee. And so I think that's really the key difference here. And so given that broad adoption, we started to invest more and more into the product. One specific area is around sharing presets. So some of you all are probably great prompt engineers. I myself am not, and so I like to co-opt what other people are building. And so we enabled the ability to write a prompt, share it, and then there's a leaderboard where you can see all of the top prompts within the company. To give you an idea of what this is being used for, my favorite one is actually around the Stripe style guide. So when I'm launching an API, I have to like write a draft of what our docs should look like, and oftentimes it takes weeks to dial that in and have it be consistent with the rest of our API documentation. Now I can just throw in a description of what the API looks like and have it be super high quality, saving weeks of work. And so that's just one example. And now discussing a couple other features we added. It's often hard to keep up with all the new model releases that are kind of coming out seemingly every day. And so we made this multi-model from the start. So we wanted to make it able to switch between models, and you'll see like a model selector here. And so we want to be able to sustain our investment here so that as new models come in, employees can use them right away. The last area is, as much as this is a very powerful tool for individuals in a chat format, we all know the power of developers. If a developer can build an application, you can get much more scale impact, both internally and externally. So we took the same system that enables PII scrubbing, data isolation, and multiple model support, and enabled an internal service that any developer at Stripe could just immediately integrate with. This actually has resulted in 60 applications live over just the past few months. You can kind of compare this to, say, we just had a central team building all the applications. You would not get the breadth or depth of these applications. Great, so now shifting gears into our user-facing products. We've also applied it in 3 or 4 places across our product suite, and they all kind of boil down to 2 different types of use cases. One is around generating code and kind of structured outputs, and the second is around unstructured data and being able to do information retrieval and question answering. Both of these are really powerful, and I'll start with the first. So we have 2 major product launches that we've had over the last 2 years. The first is enabling businesses to create custom fraud rules using natural language. And the second is the ability to query your Stripe data using natural language instead of SQL as well. I think the really interesting thing is, one, LLMs are really, really good whenever you kind of constrain the output schema they're fitting into, and so you're able to get high-quality answers quickly. And second, beyond just being a feature you add, this transforms the product as a whole. Rather than you needing to learn Stripe's custom domain-specific language for Radar, or needing to know SQL and Stripe's tables, you can actually just kind of immediately type in your intent. This, I think, 10 or 100x is the TAM for a lot of these products, and I think that's a really powerful thing that we haven't fully digested. And then lastly, the kind of product manager in me thinks about what is the right UX for this. As you can see, we played around with the right way to kind of intermix text and SQL input, but I think it's still very skeuomorphic today, and over time, this is going to evolve and be a really exciting place for us all to build.
The other place we're using LLM in our product interfaces is to answer user questions. We've built a single retrieval augmented generation system that powers multiple use cases, namely support AI and developer AI. This screenshot's about showing a support experience where the user can automatically ask questions and get answers. This obviously improves our operational efficiency and costs and so on, but more importantly, our users love this system. They're able to get their answers fast in the language they want, and what we've noticed over time is they ask it more and more interesting and complicated questions. With that, we've talked enough. Let's jump into a demo. So since we're here, I was wondering, one of the questions I had was, what do I need in my UK bank accounts to support instant payouts? Now, I could go into our Stripe documentation showing up here and search around, click on a few links, and get that information. Or I could just ask our Docs AI product that question. And you can see right here that it's going to go through our system and come up with an answer. There you go, boom. It has the exact right answer, which is if your bank account supports faster payment service, then it supports Stripe instant payouts. In this case, this was a real user question that one of our human experts judged as an accurate answer. We don't always get it right. And in fact, when we started off, most of our answers were incorrect. And that was our top focus for 2023. If we switch back to our slides, we focused on the RAG architecture and making it better. And one of the things we did was we shipped it to a small set of users and started collecting actual user questions. And we realized that the questions and the system had already become too smart for all the engineers on the team. And so we had to bring our top tenured Stripe experts to be able to rate and judge these answers. We sample about 200 questions every single week, and then focus on the worst performing answers and make the systems iteratively better. What has really worked online and offline is building a hierarchical index, just going a little bit technical here, building custom parsers for each of our document sources, and then building a contextual ranker for mixing popularity signals with cosine similarity. We haven't still solved all our problems. Some of the challenges we continue to face here are how do we monitor and evaluate and debug these systems at a faster pace. We are still learning how to incorporate user feedback, things users click on, thumbs up or thumbs down feedback, and make our systems better in an automatic manner. And then consistency with LLMs has been our third biggest challenge in this space. We'd actually love to hear from you all if you've faced these problems and how you've solved them in general. And so what's next? We've worked in machine learning for many, many years. But again, this has been the most exciting time of at least my career. One of the things we think of is imagining a world where we can build a business coach that helps our users. Someone who's building custom wood stoves probably doesn't care about doing churn and survival analysis, and we can help them with that. When we think about what are the core infrastructure and modeling components that can power such a system, and if we do build those, what delightful experiences they might produce on the Stripe surface. With that, love to open it up for questions. We're happy to take product questions, technology questions. If you have questions on trying out our Docs AI system, we're happy to try out a live demo as well. Oh, we have mics that will come around.
Hey, thank you so much. It was really interesting to hear what you've been doing for some time through the last couple of years. What did you learn as you released in 2023? You released this internal chat, and you got this rapid adoption with it across Stripe. What did you learn from deploying such a technology, particularly with your non-technical users across the business? Because I think it's a challenge that a lot of corporates are facing now. How do we get the most out of these natural language tools across our business?
I think the big thing is that it gives a tool for people to build productivity applications. Like, let's take sales. There's actually a self-selected group within our sales org that are sharing tips of what they're using to build their own versions of productivity. Whereas before, they would just not have that kind of Play-Doh of sorts to build like something. Whereas now there's like awesome like prompts, there's like custom Google Sheets that are hooked into LLM solutions. And that's a great thing where we can go in and like know what's possible to build, bring in some engineers and go productize that. And so really one of the themes for internal productivity is how do we take this chat application and go more deeper into these actual bespoke workflows that people have to give them an end-to-end solution. But I think the biggest takeaway has been it gives like everybody wants to be more productive in their jobs. And if you give them something to enable them to do so, it's really, really powerful.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. In the previous talk, Ian was talking about the importance of having human in the loop for go-to-market and for early-stage startups. But with the size and capacity that you've got at Stripe, do you still feel that human in the loop is important for some of the products that you've built for fraud monitoring and the chats, or you've got the computing power, the resources to not having to require it?
Yeah, human in the loop, that point resonated with us a lot. Human in the loop is super important for both the experiences we talked about. Users can gracefully fall back to the humans who support them. And it's actually quite fascinating to see that at the beginning, they do more of the fallback. And as the systems become better, they actually prefer the automation over time. But I can't imagine a world where we'd launch a completely automated system without any fallback.
Thanks, guys. Okay, I was really interested about, so I think LLMs for answering questions is basically what everyone wants to ship quickly. It's like obvious, but we've encountered actually it tells you lies half the time. From a product perspective and like rolling that out, how long, what was the timeline between okay, we're getting somewhere and what does that roll out? Because I think from the point of view of Stripe, you don't want to give anyone false information. So how do you say, yes, this is ready for prime time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can kind of start, but would love to kind of layer in. I think it's the question where it's so fundamentally different than, especially for Stripe, we're so used to debating APIs and parameters and names for months, it feels like, that this is really a couple of anecdotes that I think I'll share. One is we actually tried to prototype this internally and came up with a list of questions we thought people would ask. But when we rolled it out, it was actually a slightly different set. And so there is something to learning from what users actually have because it's such a wide input source, which makes it difficult. But then secondly, I think being intentional about the design, and so I think GK can talk about the actual way we grounded the model to be really informed by the documentation. And then third, I think there is a bit of, we deploy this, if you notice, in places where you can easily see the answer and then kind of have an alternative solution. Let's say for docs, you can get an answer, and if you don't think it's quite right or you want to go deeper, you can go read the documentation yourself, and so there's an easy pass-through. Same with support. You don't get an answer, you go talk to a support agent. I think this maybe ties to the human in the loop question. It's a little bit harder in places where this is the definitive source and there's no other mechanism for a user to go find an alternative solution. So I think those combination of things made us feel safe, like rolling out. That being said, I think you have to be very intentional about getting it to be good quickly, because if it's bad, all of us have interacted with unsatisfying like chatbots, and nobody really wants that in their experience.
Hi. My question was around the cost controls effectively. So it's cool that you get 1/3 adoption immediately on your rollout, but as we all know, these costs can ramp up pretty quickly, especially depending on how your guardrails look like, right? People are firing through thousands and thousands of tokens. So I'm wondering, how are you taking control of those costs? What kind of guardrails do you have? And also, how are you measuring the value that you're getting for that spend, or if you are at all?
That's an excellent question. So Karan talked about the central service we built that has about 60 applications. That service has a lot of the guardrails built into it, and none of them are super novel, things like rate limiting and so on. In terms of how do we justify ROI, in some cases it's very straightforward. Like if we deflect a support case, if we answer the user's support question automatically, that saves a ton of human costs in addition to adding that user value. And that ROI calculation is super positive in those situations, not just from a pure financial perspective, but also from a user experience perspective. And then in other cases, like the technical doc search is harder for us to justify, and those are just more product intuition bets that we believe that are going to pay out over the long term.
Go right here in the middle. Thank you.
Hey, can I ask about your LLM proxy, right? So maybe two questions. So what was the biggest challenge by building this? And the second, how do you protect a company from people sharing sensitive data? I understand PI data, right? You can scrap it. But what about like sensitive, confidential financial data or the strategy documents shared by someone in the system?
I'm sorry, just to repeat that. You're saying, what was the challenge, and then how did we prevent sharing sensitive data
so
in
what
our
was the most
internal
complex
tools?
challenge you had by doing this project?
Yeah, so I'll start with the second one. Let's see. The system has built-in controls for identifying PII data and redacting it if it does see it. We also have obviously contractual agreements with our providers. We take that super seriously, and we make sure that all our vendors take that super seriously. And where possible, we try to limit any exodus of data from our networks. So that's really the way we've managed the sensitivity of data. In terms of challenge, I think one of the challenges that was super interesting was we kind of oscillated back and forth in should we start with specialized tools or should we start with a more general open-ended surface? And I think that was one of the nice learnings, that a general open-ended surface worked a lot better. And as we started seeing people use it for special use cases, it was easy for us to then go productionize that particular use case. So one example is a lot of folks started writing SQL generator, internal SQL generating prompts, where they would describe their tables and so on in great detail and allow other people from different teams to use it to generate data. And so that seemed like a use case where we could go build a SQL generation tool that worked internally based on those prompts.
So the support chat is great, but I would imagine a company like Stripe would use it for their core products like Radar and payment acceptance, right? So could you share some interesting stats or things that you've seen internally that have uplifted your, let's say, acceptance rate or early fraud warnings rates, for example, because that's more interesting for us as users? Or is the latency of the newest models a limiting factor for you to sort of apply those?
Yeah, maybe to take a stab at it, exactly what you described is very much a focus for this year. I think we are leaning into a more traditional ML model approach and kind of using neural networks, et cetera, to kind of do all those things, given the latency and also just the volume of data required. I think we also have a broad ambition this year, and one of the things we're excited about is now that we've seen initial success with kind of a few vertical applications, we have broad goals to go to every single product team and see what ideas they can go incubate and run an A/B test or try to roll out. And so actually what you described is something that we're actively thinking about, of how do we get this to be broader? It's hard because I don't know the ins and outs of auth rates, and so just it's kind of a combination of us going and chatting with the teams that know that space and finding those opportunities where we can go add kind of traditional ML models, but also kind of LLM features.
And the team's done a lot of work in that space in the past using things like contextual bandits, where we optimize the auth rates, and the feature's called adaptive acceptance. and we can really like make a big difference in those paths. And as Karan said, we're now seeing what's next in that same direction. Super important to us.
Let me just say, fantastic presentation, guys. Very, very focused, very apt for programmers. What tools are there and what library facilities do you have at Stripe for beginner programmers that are looking at Stripe? I know Solana has its build days, it has its hackathons, ETH has its own hackathons. What are you guys doing to incorporate the adoption into your infrastructure? Because that's the fundamental issue.
External, like kind of with groups like this, or kind of within the company?
External from this company and to the wider industry as a whole.
It's a great question. Absolutely, like events like this are a great moment for us to kind of like meet users and also encourage people to use our applications. So it's something we do think about actively, which is why you kind of see us in a lot of startup developer-oriented forums to get familiar. The other thing that's really changed, I would say, over the past few years is we've actually increased our sets of tools, not just for the developer audience, but having a lot of no-code solutions. You can go in, not write any code, and actually accept payments right away with our payment links product. And so I actually think that you'll see us increasingly trying to find, because we have this infrastructure that's like generally usable for different audiences, we are trying to kind of increase our engagement for not just the developer persona. Well, thanks everyone.
Thank you.